Welcome to the training on coaching for empowerment. This training is part of the Direct Supporter Training Certification Program. It is important that you have the workbook that goes with this training printed so you can complete the workbook as this training unfolds. If you do not have the workbook in front of you, please pause the video and print the workbook and then return to the video when you are ready. Today we're going to be talking about a technology that you can have in your toolkit. This technology you can use in your conversations with those you support in order to unleash your teammates. So really, this is just a tool that you can use when needed to really empower your teammates. To understand how this tool works, we're going to look at common management mistakes. So what we're going to first do is watch this video and then talk about what common management mistakes are. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do. That's it.
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet.
Okay, this video may seem silly. I know it seems silly to a lot of people, but I find it incredibly important. How often in the workplace do we find employees that stumble into a problem and they stop, they're stuck, they're paralyzed, and they look for help, but likely their manager's not around, not available to help them. And so what do? They stop what they're doing. Again, they're paralyzed. So they're just waiting to be rescued. An employee who's stuck like this is not an empowered employee. So what we're going to do today is talk about how to prevent this from happening. And this typically happens when we're doing what we call traditional coaching. And there's a traditional coaching trap we're going to talk about. So traditional coaching is coaching in which you assume that performance gaps are the result of knowledge gaps. So in this model, you believe that it's the coach's job to transfer what they know to the individual. However, what happens when the individual knows more about the job than their manager? Especially in our organization, there are so many subject matter experts that there's a lot of times when there's a specialist or an employee who knows more about a certain topic than the person that's supporting them. So how can that direct supporter be impactful if coaching is focused on relaying the knowledge that the coach has to that individual? In addition, how do managers know that an individual can translate their new knowledge into action? So in traditional coaching, if you look at this case of the escalator, you are teaching someone the steps to take to get off the escalator when it breaks down. That's fine, but there are some issues with this coaching model. So this model is not wrong, but it really only works when 4 conditions exist all together. First, the coaches have to have the necessary knowledge to provide, aka the coach is truly the expert, and they have to have that knowledge that they can give to the person they're supporting. Secondly, coaches have to be able to effectively communicate their knowledge to an individual. Third, the individuals have to be interested in the knowledge that they're going to get and that knowledge that the coach is going to share. And then lastly, That individual needs to know how to translate that knowledge into action, into required behavior. How often do all 4 of these conditions show up? Honestly, not as frequently as one would hope. To have all those 4 conditions at once is very rare. And therefore, if you rely on this traditional coaching model in which managers have all the answers and they have to impart all their knowledge to the people they're supporting, you're likely setting yourself up to fail. So we're going to talk about a different model, or I should say a new technique. And to be okay with this technique, there's some fundamentals of high performance that we need to accept. So first of all, the first fundamental is everyone has a phenomenal capacity to learn and perform at a high level. The second fundamental is the biggest obstacle of one's performance isn't not knowing what to do. It's not doing what we know. So I'm going to repeat that because this is vitally important for this entire technology or this entire tool. The biggest obstacle of one's performance is not that they don't know what to do. It's that they frequently don't do what they know. And then a common coaching trap is making the mistake of allowing individuals to not do what we know. Coaches like to come in and be the hero and help them, but really, you're setting them up to fail. So a lot of people believe they're a manager now and therefore they need to have all the answers. That is not true. Coaches should not have all the answers. It's not going to set you up to succeed. It's not going to set your team up to succeed. It's going to set you up for an escalator situation like we saw in the video. So instead of having all the answers, coaches know that people already know how to be great. The people you're supporting already know how to be great. It's your job as a coach to bring out their greatness. And if you can do this, it allows for decision velocity, or what I call resourcefulness, and a team of empowered employees. So as a coach or as a direct supporter, if you can help people do what they already know how to do, it allows them to become resourceful and allows for your team to be empowered employees. So this is what we're calling coaching for empowerment. So this focuses less on adding knowledge, because again, we're assuming the knowledge is there. People have high capacity for performance. So instead of focusing on knowledge, what we're doing is we're focusing on removing the obstacles that block the individual's capacity. So it's about tapping into individuals' inherent capacity, increasing their belief in themselves, raising their levels of energy and passion, and in other words, it's about increasing an individual's focus, faith, and fire. So what does that mean? It's increasing their focus, which is their focus to do the job, narrowing in to solve the problem. Their faith is their faith that they can do it, that they can rely on themselves and not have to go to you. And their fire is the drive, the drive to do the job. So if you can help unleash them and help teach them how to rely on themselves, they will be more focused, they'll believe they can do it, and they'll be more dedicated. So using coaching for empowerment, if we relate it to the escalator video, you're giving them the ability to find the way off the escalator without having to teach them step by step how to do it. So regardless of what situation they're in, whether they're on an escalator or on a moving skyway, if something happens, they have the tool set to find their way off versus needing to rely on step-by-step instructions every time they run into a different obstacle. So how do we do this? There is a tool now that I'm going to teach you, or this technology that I'm going to teach you, that actually is really simple when you look at it. But if you follow this simple process, you can help your employees become empowered because you're unleashing their capacity and you're teaching them how to do it themselves. And this process is used within your conversations, within dialogue. So it's going to walk through how you have this dialogue and how you frame your dialogue so that you can empower your teammates. So the process is called GROW, G-R-O-W. GROW is a 4-step process to follow for breakthrough conversations. It's important to note that you can also use this to plan out difficult conversations. If you use GROW correctly, it's really a blueprint to help your team members do what they know. So it's a blueprint into a conversation that you're going to have with them that will help them walk through the steps of doing what they know versus you having to give them a whole new set of knowledge. So let's look at this GROW in action step by step. So the first part of GROW is G, which stands for goal. The GROW process starts with the goal. In setting a goal, you target the individual's objective, what they want to accomplish. So in this step, you're going to clarify the goal of the conversation. You're going to test the goal against SMART criteria. Remember, specific, meaningful, agreed to, realistic, and time framed. And you're going to examine the consequences if the goal is not met. So what happens is when you start this conversation with someone, let's say they're stuck on a client problem, instead of jumping straight to the answer, you're going to walk through the GROW process. You're going to start with G, goal. And the goal language here reads simply like this. What do you want from this discussion? What's your goal? What's the SMART criteria? And what happens if you do not meet that goal? So the first step in this dialogue is walking them through the G. Then we go to the R, and R stands for reality. So the second step of the GROW process is exploring reality. So you follow questions in this section to help coach the individual to get a sense of the current state of performance, to evaluate the previous attempt to address the issue, and to get a gut check on whether the goal of the conversation is realistic or not. So the first step, you talked about what's the goal that they're trying to achieve. This second step, now you're saying, okay, what's the reality? What's happening right now? What have you already tried? And is this dialogue to allow you to see, is their goal realistic? Is it not realistic, etc.? So what does this language look like? You ask, briefly explain what's been happening. What have you tried so far? What were the results of what you tried so far? What's your sense of the obstacles for you or for others? And is the goal still realistic? So you're asking them these questions to walk them through this next step. Now, once you determine what the reality is, you move to the next piece, O, and O stands for options. So the third step in the GROW process is brainstorming options. This allows the coach and the individual to generate ideas for meeting the individual's goal. So through this, you're going to explore every idea without judgment. You're going to ask them, what are your ideas? What are some options? And you're going to explore all of those without putting your judgment on them at this time. Then you're going to help the individual narrow their list to those actions that they believe will meet the goal. And you keep digging in by asking, what else? What else could you do? If that doesn't work, what would you do next? So what does that look like? Describe your fantasy land. If you could do anything to solve this problem, what might you do? If you're watching this conversation, what would you recommend? Do any of these ideas interest you enough to explore further? If you were to do this, how might you go about this? And then, would you like suggestions for me? So I want to make a very important note on the options section. Only after they have given all their potential options, then you can ask, can I offer a few ideas? And when they say yes, then share the options you have that they have not come up with yet. So what's really key here is this entire GROW process is working for you to help them coach themselves out of a problem. So you don't want to jump right to problem solving, but there might be a time where you need to provide something that they haven't gotten to yet. You can provide it. You can provide an option, but you have to wait for all of their options to be given, and then you have to ask permission to share it. By doing this, this allows you to help solve the problem, but without taking over and solving the problem and decreasing their empowering situation. If you follow the GROW steps, and then at the end of the O piece, add a possible solution, it's not cutting them out from the knees. It's just giving them another thing to consider. So then after you cover the options, the last piece of GROW is the W, and that's way forward. So the fourth step of the process is identifying the way forward. So with this, you check if there's commitment to any of the options moving forward. Did anything we talk about make sense that you want to do next? You check for obstacles to the action plan and explore workarounds. If you run into this problem with this client, what would you might do? You identify specific actions and agree on a timeline for completion. And you ensure the individual takes responsibility for tangible next steps. This isn't about taking it from them. Again, this is supposed to be an empowering conversation. So this is just making sure they have the framework they need to take their options to action. So the language for this step looks like, does this option interest you enough to take action? How will you go about it? What might get in that way? How might you overcome that? What and when is the next step? And again, be smart, be specific. When is it going to happen? How are you going to measure it? Is it attainable? Is it realistic? What's the time frame on it? So there's a worksheet in your workbook that walks through this in great detail. So it starts over here on the right side with the goal. What topic do you want to discuss? What do you want from this discussion? What are the consequences if you don't reach this goal? Then it comes down here to the reality. Then it comes over here to the options. And then it comes up here to the way forward. So when you have these discussions, you can actually grab this worksheet and you can walk through it until this becomes second nature to you. And if you follow this process of asking questions, this helps your individuals figure out how to solve the answers themselves. And you don't have to do this that many times with an employee for them to start to get the tool that they need to move forward and to not be reliant on you. So really, by using this GROW technique, you are teaching them how to go through the steps themselves by modeling it for them. Because modeling is really one of the best ways for them to learn. And as they're going through these steps, now they're learning how to go through the steps without, verbally having to do it with you. The result of this process is that capacity is accessed, leading to faster, more accurate decisions or decision velocity, which drives both individual and organizational performance. So really, you're creating a team of more resourceful people who can come to answers and the correct answers quickly and therefore not be as dependent on you. So when do you use GROW? You can use it a lot of different times. You can use it in your monthly reviews as you're running into obstacles. I think it's most valuable at got-a-minute requests. When people come and say, hey, I have a problem, can you help me? If you use this process to walk them through it, you're helping them by showing them the techniques to use versus being their hero coming in saving the day. Again, we don't want to always be the hero because that prevents your employee from being empowered and prevents them from knowing how to do it themselves. This also works in performance coaching as you're dealing with performance improvement. And what else? There's a lot of other avenues, from leadership development to in meetings on the spot. This is the kind of techniques you can use a lot to make sure that you're setting your team up for empowerment conversations. So this is the end of the training. What I do want to talk about is the certification program. So to be certified, you need to have 2 conversations using the GROW methodology, and you need to document them in this GROW worksheet. So you have these worksheets in your workbook, and this assignment is outlined in your workbook as well. So actually write down step by step in the conversation, as you're going through with the individual, write it out, and then turn this in as part of your workbook to get certified. That is it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is Elizabeth, and good luck.